Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, life, and faith converge with your host, Aaron A. Train Smith.
Today, my guest is one of the most profound, one of the most creative and beloved artists in the contemporary Christian community. He's a songwriter, guitarist, vocalist, photographer, and painter. He was co-founder and guitarist for the group Vector, guitarist for both the Charlie Peacock Band and Trio. He toured and recorded extensively with the late Rich Mullins and the Ragamuffin Band, and is currently guitarist with Steve Taylor and the Perfect Foil. While making all this music, Jimmy has maintained an active business in the visual arts of photography and painting. He has created a plethora, as they would say, of album cover designs, and his paintings are exhibited in numerous galleries nationwide. He is also a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. So where does he get the time to do so much? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's ask him. How you doing, Jimmy?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Intersect.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Jim. Let's start from the beginning. Alliance, Nebraska. You just celebrated a birthday.
1954.
Ooh, my goodness.
Yeah, 62.
Wow. December 29th, eh?
That's it.
That's pretty cool, man. So tell me, what was your upbringing like in Alliance?
Well, it was a rural, austere community in western Nebraska, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Think Keystone Pipeline area. Very desolate, very much farmland and ranch land, and lots of time to get into trouble.
I'm sure you did.
I was born into a family of 3 brothers, and along about, I think I was 12 or 13, my little sister came along. So I'm from a family of 5. We're all still living and doing well. And, of course, I spent the first 15 years of my life in Alliance. And then my parents decided to make the move to Denver, Colorado, big urban center, probably a couple hundred miles from my hometown. And then, shortly after, California bound. I think.
Why
I was
did they move
18.
to Colorado? What was the incentive?
My dad was in a business in Nebraska that had slowly been winding down over the years, and they decided to relocate to concentrate on starting a second career as a real estate brokerage guy. He helped people borrow money to buy single-family homes.
Oh, great. So how did the music thing start for you? Did you have any other musicians in your family?
No, I've come to discover that there's music in my mother's ancestry. I did not, I guess I didn't really ever think about it until I was much older. But as a child, of course, I took, like lots of my friends, I took piano lessons. And after a short period of time, began to become a little more selective. So my first instrument of choice was, ironically, the drums. And I took a couple of lessons on drums and discovered my teacher had a few guitars laying around. And I was just drawn to the instrument and sort of quickly moved laterally over to the guitar. And at the same time, this would have been age 9 or 10, think British invasion. So every Sunday night, gathered around the television set watching the Ed Sullivan Show, like many others of my age, the Beatles appearance, followed by many, many others, Rolling Stones, Paul Revere and the Raiders, you name it, the Animals, et cetera, et cetera. I was taken by the idea of playing and singing for fun, for the sake of rock and roll. And lucky for me, I was raised in an environment where all of those things were encouraged. And I soon found myself in the Catholic version of contemporary music. At the time, they were making the move from Latin to English. And as a part of that, they introduced something called the folk mass. So I was instantly interested in being a part of that group. Since I had to go to mass every Sunday anyway, I figured I might as well be playing. And lucky for me, I was talented enough, even at an early age, to acquire the necessary skills to join in on that team. And I did that for many, many years until I moved to Denver, actually.
Okay. So what was it like in Denver for you musically? Did you still?
Well, it was pretty exciting. Yeah, I was no longer attending church by then. We did a little dabbling, but it was a new community and a really, really big community comparatively. For example, Alliance at the time was probably around 4,000 or 5,000 people total, and I think my high school population, the student body, was around 3,800. So I went from a very tiny town to a very, very big town. And, lucky for me, I gravitated towards friends that were involved in music, and I quickly became involved and enrolled in the jazz workshop, jazz band part of my high school experience. So as a sophomore, junior, and senior, I was part of the jazz band in addition to being in multiple rock bands around my campus.
Were you playing guitar in the jazz band?
No, at that point I was playing bass. There was a guy that had already been there. I think he must have been he was a year ahead of me, I guess. So he had the guitar chair. And so I volunteered to be the bass player. And it turned out pretty well for me because as it turned out, I was a pretty exceptional bass player, even without knowing what I was doing. It seemed almost intuitive to me. So quickly became an important and integral part of that band. And in fact, during the course of those years, won many awards for my position as the bass player. So that sort of cemented an idea in my head that I might be the bass player on the Johnny Carson show one day.
Okay. So what happened to the bass?
Well, you know what? I think the best way I could describe it is that I was still secretly in love with guitar playing and the idea of being somehow in front of what was going on. And so my gravitation towards the guitar had more to do with my faith conversion than anything else. I suddenly found myself in a situation where I was being called on to not only play bass once in a while, but to play guitar once in a while in different ensemble settings, many of which were faith-based. So I sort of gravitated that direction. And again, not having the proper training, I just kind of blindly followed the muse. And the muse ended up being productive for me. I had relatively original ideas and relatively advanced technique for in light of how much time I'd actually spent on it. In other words, I was kind of a natural, I guess. And so that opened lots and lots of doors for me.
Did you ever play clubs and stuff in Denver?
Oh, yeah. I started that actually in Nebraska when I was probably, maybe I was 13 or 14. A friend of mine's dad had a Hispanic kind of a Tex-Mex band, and they would bring me with them either to show me off as a guitarist or to make fun of me. I'm not sure. But I played the Kiwanis Club. I played the Knights of Columbus. I played the War Dads. I played lots of gigs with these guys at what was called the American Legion. I think it was mostly, veterans and associated friend groups that would throw parties on Fridays and Saturday nights. And often I got to tag along and play guitar in the band, learning songs like La Bamba and I don't know, Gloria. I mean, I can't even remember most of it, but it seems like a blur. But if I stop for a minute and think about it, I think those were formative years for me at a very early age, kind of signaling what was to come. By the time I moved to Denver and was active as much as I was playing not only clubs, but I had another band that was specializing in proms and bar mitzvahs and special occasions of all kinds. So I was constantly playing and constantly practicing by then. All those years that I had skipped over personal practice was catching up with me. And I just, seems like from the time I was about 15 until I was about 20, I just played nonstop guitar and bass round the clock.
Mm. So how did you, you're going to Denver and you're playing bass and guitar and you're still playing clubs and you're playing social events and you're playing faith-based music. And so how did you juggle all that?
I don't really think it was all that much of a juggling match. I think it was just a matter of being available. Mm-hmm. And I was never the guy that would think twice about the opportunity to go play. And I guess that was kind of blind ambition in a way. But on the other hand, it seemed like there were never that many overlaps. In other words, I could have been in a conflict over gigs like vying for my attention, but that never seemed to occur. It just seemed like one thing led to another, and it was all fairly seamless.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like my past too, back in the day when you're a younger player. Things were so different back then, and everybody was playing and learning and it was just so wide open sort of experience, the phone would ring and you'd go.
Yeah. For example, I think, for example, the fact that I don't think until I was in my 40s did I ever audition for anything. It was just kind of laying there for the taking. And, I always just kind of went for it,
Yeah. Who was that audition with?
I auditioned for a gal named Shania Twain in 2001 or 2. And looking back, I'm really grateful that I did not actually land the gig because it looked like a comedy troupe mixed with a circus. So I was probably ill fit to be in that band.
Yeah, I remember seeing those shows
that were in that. Yeah, I had some friends that were in there, and they had recommended me, and I all but got the gig. And it turned out that I wasn't a good enough dancer.
I had. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I had. I was called for an audition once too. Back in the 80s. And I turned it down. I didn't go because it required dancing. as a drummer, standing up, playing drums, and moving.
I had one other audition, but I was only 18. I was a bass player at the time, predominantly, and I was in Sacramento. We had just recently relocated to Sacramento, and I had befriended a bunch of people at my local guitar store, started teaching lessons, and I got a call a few months after living there, just for literally 6 months or so. A guy had gotten my name and was asking me if I'd like to join the new Christy Minstrels, which I had I'd kind of heard of, but I wasn't quite sure what they were. So back then, you couldn't just go find out. I mean, you had to ask around. There was no internet or Google or, even in as much as people knew of them, nobody was quite sure what they were doing. I mean, it was just a traveling singing group as far as I could tell. But get this, I had to audition over the phone with I played upright bass, and I had my upright and the phone sitting on the desk, and they asked me to do a couple of things. So I did. And then I sang a little bit, and then they said, would you be willing to relocate to Los Angeles? And I said, I would have to check with my mom and dad. And with that, we never spoke again.
How old were you?
That was I was 17 or 18. I can't remember.
Wow.
But I think that made it off limits. I could not have decided for myself. And, of course, as much as I could imagine, they must have thought that was probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jim, we're about to come up on a commercial break here. Hold that thought there. We want to talk a little bit more about that. And just want to remind people that you're listening to Intersect on the Intertalk Radio Network, and we're speaking with my best friend, Mr. Jimmy Abegg. And we want you guys to stay tuned, and we'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors at Pitbull Audio and Studio Instrument Rentals nationwide. A special shout out to the folks over at Innovative Percussion, makers of the finest tools for pounding and thrashing. Thanks, guys. I love your stuff. Okay, folks, we'll be right back. Thank you.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron A-Train Smith.
And we're back. This is the Intersect Radio program, and I'm your host, Aaron A-Train Smith. We're powered by the Intertalk Radio Network, the worldwide leader in music business talk. Today, my guest is Mr. Jimmy Abegg, guitarist, singer, painter, writer, photographer, all around busy man. He's doing it all, folks, and has been doing it for years and years. And before we went on a commercial break, we were in Denver, Colorado, and Jimmy's about to tell us how he got to California. Take it away, Jim.
Yeah, so that's a good story. I actually, my parents once again decided to relocate. The real estate business was doing well, and my mother had long dreamed of living near her brother and sister in Sacramento, and so, with no real strings attached, they decided to move on to the West Coast. At the same time, I was graduating high school and was offered a scholarship to go on a program called Outward Bound, which is an outdoor wilderness leadership training course in the Rockies, as it turned out. And it was a 5-week sort of a best way to describe it would be like a hiking, climbing, rappelling, kayaking, boot camp of sorts. And
they're getting you ready for the Marines.
Yeah, it was better than the Army, I'll tell you that, because I had drawn number 42 in the draft, and I was looking at a career in Vietnam, I was afraid. And so lucky for me that year, they actually did not partake in the draft much, and in fact, I think the following year it was over. But there was a lot of fear in my heart for the idea of potentially becoming an artillery man, being raised by a pacifist who I was never allowed to be near guns, let alone shoot one. I was probably a bad candidate for that kind of a change anyway. So, and as my luck would have it, I didn't need to worry about that, but I did go on Outward Bound. And when I was done, I came back home, actually not home. I stayed with friends, and my goal was I had already planned to make my way to California and join my parents when I was done sometime in the middle of July. And I met up with 3 or 4 of my friends, and we hitchhiked from Denver to California via, Albuquerque on through Arizona and Las Vegas, and then on down to LA. And then from LA, we hitchhiked up to Sacramento. But meanwhile, a pretty important crossroads in my life occurred about 2 weeks into the trip. We were finally in Southern California. Our destination was Southern Cal because one of the guys I was with had a relative who lived in Newport Beach, California. We had a place to stay for a few days on our way to my house, my new house in Sacramento with my parents. So we took that as a signal that we needed to experience Southern California. Thinking back, I don't know really what was going across our dreamer wavelength, but for some reason we just sort of went for it. And while in Newport, I'll never forget the first night we arrived there, we came across what appeared to be a huge highway, maybe not an interstate, but a pretty primal trunk line that on one side was Los Angeles and on the other side was the ocean. So I'll never forget coming up from the underpass over a big berm and looking out upon the Pacific and thinking, man, we made it. And so unbeknownst to us, it was not allowed to camp or have any kind of nighttime anything on the beach. Well, not being natives, we went down to the beach, enjoyed the ocean, and rolled out our sleeping bags and hit the sack. And the next morning, woke up to tens of thousands of beach combers and fun lovers, much to our surprise, also viewing signs that said, no overnight camping, no this, no that. And we
couldn't see them in the dark.
No, I guess not. So, but a funny thing happened that morning. We no sooner got up and started to get our stuff together and try to figure out our way when a little lady came up to my group. There were 4 of us, and asked if she could talk to us for a minute. And we were polite teenagers and said, sure. And she began to relate to us the story of Jesus and the idea of redemption and the idea that we may in fact be called to become Christians. And little did we know that this was the very beginnings and symbolically of what became known as the Jesus movement of the 70s and late 60s, early 70s. So this, keep in mind, this was in 1973, summer of 73. And so being the agreeable soul that I was, I agreed to say the sinner's prayer and ask Jesus into my life at that juncture.
Right
upon
there.
Which,
right there,
right
that
then,
time.
right there,
okay.
Bam, done. And I didn't know what I was getting into, of course, but that's okay. It just seemed like perfect timing. And I accompanied. She asked us to come with her to have a free lunch. So we went across the street to a little house, and sure enough, they fed us a healthy lunch and gave us a book of John and sent us on our way. So we left that lunch meeting, and little did I know the little lady was in reckless pursuit of me again. And she tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I just wanted to let you know I have a word of knowledge for you. And of course, I'm thinking, what is that? I'm just now reconciling what just happened and not sure what she's saying next. And as a matter of fact, she said, I see you influencing millions of people for Jesus and his cause. Really? And I thought, okay. And I never thought about it again. And we went on our way, and several weeks later found our way back to Sacramento, my new home. And within probably 6 months, I had found my way into a small but very lively neighborhood church of about 100 people, and instantly playing music in the band. And at this point, I had definitely kind of convinced myself that I was a guitar player who played bass. And so I was active in the group as a guitarist, but on the weekends and in my work life, I was teaching bass and playing gigs on bass, and never really thought about what was coming. Enrolled in junior college, took
Which one?
Band in American River College.
American River College.
And I was in the jazz ensemble, and I was in, I was practicing. I was straddling an art education and a music education. So I was in, I think they called it stage band maybe. And, I took, performance. You had to take your primary instrument. You had to take lessons. And so I was doing my bass thing and studying, and, the whole time spending all of my waking hours playing guitar, and, trying to read the New Testament, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was surprised by all that I was discovering, about what a faith life looks like. Since I was raised Catholic, I thought it was all do's and don'ts and go to church and behave and all of those sorts of things. Little did I know that there was a way to find a personal communication with a omniscient God. And that was a big surprise to me. I felt like I had found a personal and a unique relationship with somebody I could literally, granted it's a one-way conversation in a way, but I had the Bible. I had him talking back to me in words, but in my prayer life, which was radiant at the time, I just felt like I was being held in good hands for the first time in a long time, in a life filled with somewhat instability, indicated by the sudden moves. As it turns out, my parents' moves were really meant to be a marriage-saving effort. They were having trouble staying together and ultimately ended up apart. But unbeknownst to me, that kind of activity, it seemed naive at the time, but in the rearview mirror, I can see how unstable my world was. So I really I needed some kind of tether. So it came at a perfect time for me.
Yeah, it's like, we can see God's hand moving in our life when we look back.
Exactly.
We move forward.
Might not
in
see
faith.
it in the moment. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Man, that's great. So, so you're playing at this little church. What was the little church? Was that Warehouse? The beginnings of Warehouse?
No, it was another church. It was, I can't remember the name of it, to tell you the truth. It was a Foursquare. I think it was called Orangevale Foursquare. And it was called a Foursquare Gospel Church. Once again, in my rearview mirror now, I know that it was a Pentecostal / Assemblies of God charismatic church that was embracing. It was about a block from my house. I just walked. I walked down there. One night I heard music coming from this little place. So I walked down there to see what was going on. And I looked in the window and somebody tapped me on the back and said, "Hey, do you want to come in?" So I felt busted. So I did. And, man, it changed my life. I mean, I met a bunch of people they were playing. I don't know if you remember a band called Andre Crouch and the Disciples.
Oh yeah.
But they were doing, Andre Crouch music. And by the next week, I was playing guitar in what can only be seen as sort of jazz rock fusion gospel. And, man, I was in seventh heaven. I found my place in the neighborhood.
Wow. So how long did you do that? How long did you do that? I did that for about a year or two. And about 2 years into that, some friends and I started playing out. We had a little band together, a kid named Dennis Broadway. I always wonder whatever became of him. He was such a talented singer, guitar player. We would go out and play different places, and we got invited to play a Tuesday night Bible study at the Warehouse, which at the time, that's all there was. It was just a Tuesday night fellowship that met in an old carpet warehouse. And there was probably 40 people. And that was my first taste of what would later become a 17-year experience there in Sacramento, working and living and making records and getting along with the folks at the Warehouse. Okay, so let me ask you, when did the interest in painting and photography and that sort of stuff happen?
Well, the whole time growing up, I was also straddling these kind of natural gifts as an artist. So I was always the guy that would make the posters and do the drawings and do the band posters for gigs. And I had a great desire to be a painter. And along those lines, I have many, I would say, benchmark memories that kind of tipped the balance in favor of art over other things at times. And then once in a while, like I said, these things would come up that would tip the balance in favor of music. So I never not participated in the fine arts. I was always involved, even though I was involved with the music side as well. Mm-hmm. And somehow, as fate would have it, my abilities met the how do you make a living area early. I found that I could use my art to offset my need as a musician. Obviously, as a musician, I never made quite enough, and as an artist, I never made quite enough. So it kind of took them all to contribute and balance that income level that one needs to be housed and clothed and fed.
Yeah. I hear you, brother. Been there, done that. No. Yep. Matter of fact, you and I worked together a bit in Sacramento.
We did. We were making a living at the warehouse when we were playing music full time for many, many years. Lucky for us, there was a more or less part-time, sometimes full-time job taking care of the facilities where we worked. So we did our music most days, and then did some cleaning and some upkeep and taking care of by that point, by the time you came along, it was a rather large operation. It was somewhere in the thousands, I would guess.
Okay, Jim, hold that thought there. We're going to have to take another break right here. Folks, you're listening to Intersect on the Intertalk Radio Network. A word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Yes, and we're back. This is the Intersect Radio program. I'm your host, Aaron Smith, and my guest today is Jimmy A. We're powered on this show by the Intertalk Radio Network, the worldwide leader in music business talk. Before we get back to Jimmy, I just want to shout out again to our sponsors at Pitbull Audio and all the folks at Studio Instrument Rentals and all my great friends at Innovative Percussion. Now, the music we've been coming on for each segment is music done by my guest, Jimmy A. And we were just talking between the breaks. That music was recorded over 20 years ago. And it sounds just as fresh and exciting. And, man, it's just so hard to believe. I was on some of those sessions. And
you were on that last one.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
And I know where it was recorded, in that little room there, and man,
yeah,
those are great days. But they had their start, while we were cleaning bathrooms in Sacramento at Warehouse Ministries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
pretty exciting time.
Yeah. So how did we get out of being janitors?
I think we just made the leap. I'll speak for myself. It came time to make a decision. My wife and I had an opportunity to move to Tennessee and disconnect from all that we had been up to in Sacramento. And so we said yes to that opportunity. We moved out here, my 3 kids, then 2, maybe 5, and maybe 8. Or 2, 5, and 8 or 9. And, the rest is history. We thought we were just coming for a couple of years to grow our music endeavors. And I've been here now since 1989. So that's quite a long time ago, 27, 28 years, maybe almost.
Yeah. But
the interesting thing was that you and I, I was going to start by saying you and I made a record. You were brought in because our drummer wasn't quite ready for the studio, and Charlie Peacock had known you from a previous encounter and suggested you to play drums on a record we did called Mannequin Virtue with the band that I had called Vector. And that was my first taste of the A-Train, which was lots of fun. I think, as I recall, we made that record in 3 days, maybe.
Yeah.
The basics, and which was a lot to chew off. And I'll never forget one day, I think we were probably maybe the first or second day in, and I turned to you and I said how great it was to be playing with you because you were clearly the glue that we needed. And I had said something to the effect that, hey, I'm sorry I'm not a better guitarist. And I'll never forget you said, man, you're just fine. Don't worry about it. And that was good to hear from a new friend that in all of my insecurity, I found somebody who said, man, don't worry about it. This is the best thing I've heard in a long time. So,
oh yeah, dude, you're always
some affirmation.
You're always on point with me, man. I used to love you. Had that you had that Roland synth. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the submarine, I called it.
Yeah, I was like, man, this cat is cool. He's in the future. I love this stuff.
Yeah, it's the future.
Yeah. Man,
so we made
great.
that record. We made another record. We made the Peacock stuff. And then fast forward, we're in Tennessee. And once again, we're making what was his first record. And I'm not sure you were here for that one, but you were here for the second one for sure.
I was here for the second one.
Love Life record. Yeah. The first one, we were kind of under the sway of the powers that be at EMI Christian, and we had no control, I don't think, over the who was manning the ship.
Right.
And once it self-corrected, that next one was with you, and then we
Roger
went on to do and Roger and Vince, of course, and man, it was a blast. You know, how lucky. Yeah. And then fast forward, you're on my solo records, and all of pretty much my future. I think several years later, I found myself in the Rich Mullins band, and the drummer that was with us previously had declined the offer for the next 3-month tour, and I suggested you, and you said yes. And the next thing you know, we were together again for many, many years.
Many years. I remember seeing you and Rick Elias at the NAMM show, I think it was. And you asked me, "What are you up to, man?" You know, and we're going to call you. I'm going to call you. I got something for you. And that was my introduction to Rich Mullins. And
what a trip!
Right after that, we went to some little church in Indiana and surrounded by corn stalks.
And rehearsed. I'll never forget that.
That was great. And we got there, and me and Mark Robertson were the only guys that knew the songs.
I'm not surprised. That may still be a problem.
Because we were, you know, it was kind of an audition, you know. We had been accepted, you know, but you know, it's like,
you were in.
you know, I'm playing with Rich Mullins. I better know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that was fun. He was a character, that's for sure. He wanted it just right.
Yeah. You remember all those times when just before a show, he'd come in and introduce a new thing he wanted us to do, and he was insistent that we were going to do it that night.
Oh yes,
incredible,
and kill it.
Yeah, and we did. You know, we did.
Yeah, like he was an optimist. That's for sure.
Yeah, the cups thing. I remember he just walks in one day and goes, "We're doing the cups tonight," and I'm going, "What's that?"
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah,
that was fun.
So tell me, what are you doing these days?
Wow. Well, I'm
no.
a lot.
I
am.
No. Before that, we got to talk about your album cover designs, your photography, your paintings.
Oh,
okay.
And all that I'll trip into that for a second. Yeah. What happened was I had a house full of teenagers, and I was on the road most of the time, so it seemed clear that it would be helpful if Dad was around a little more. Mm-hmm. And lucky for me, I had been sort of drawn to the visual arts again, having done a little bit along the way, all those many years, lots of record covers, you know, Vector, Charlie Peacock, you know, a host of opportunities that were always coming my way. And it just seemed like if I had extended a little bit of effort, that I could probably do more of that. And by doing that, I could probably justify staying home a little more. And so I began to pursue that in about 95. And by the time 94, 95, 96, I was really trying to figure out how to be a photographer and a designer. And I had it kind of figured out by then. And so was involved in what would now, again, in the rearview mirror, be probably hundreds of CD covers and projects and photo shoots and designs. And those those were only a part of what I also did because I was still playing music the whole time. So, they were kind of mutually helpful in support of each other. The musicians that would find out that I'm a designer and photographer would always want me to do it because they liked me. And the people that were interested in my design and art would find out I'm a musician and would invite me to do music stuff. So it was kind of feeding off of each other. Those communities apparently were hovering next door to each other. And so after a long series of making, packaging and designing and photographing, I had come into contact with literally dozens of probably the very cream of the crop in the Christian music community. And so largely based on those years, my name began to gain a little value. If I was working on something, it meant it was going to be better than it might have been with someone else. So I was considered to be an ally, and little did I know that many, many years later that would come back to help me as I began to get a little older. In my 50s, I started to lose my vision, which is very common. Most people have to go by readers, and I just didn't think anything of it until a few years later when I started noticing that I really was starting to not be able to see with my left eye. So go in and get a little consult with the doc, and they say, well, you need to go see a optometrist, and the optometrist says, well, you need to go see a retinologist. And as it turns out, I am in the early stages of what is called macular degeneration, which is where the macula of your central eye begins to lose the center part of its vision, and you're left with what is called peripheral vision. And so I was not really panicked, but I was definitely stirred because I wasn't quite sure what that meant for me. Being a visual artist, being a musician, I rely on my sight to read charts. I rely on my sight to see what I'm painting or drawing or designing or photographing and or photographing, that is. And I think that over a short period of time, I realized that I was soon going to be sight impaired pretty dramatically. My vision now, this is now a ongoing condition that is probably, I'm 6 years into it probably by now. And I am left with what could only be described as suggested vision. I see peripherally very well. I always say it's a good time to be blind because my phone is technologically advanced. I can speak into it. It will tell me, what's going on. It'll read to me my emails. It will help me find numbers. It's just a great time because of technology to have the impairment that I have. It's fascinating too that I think there is a great deal of love and affection for me, having gathered many, many friends over many, many years. Some friends came to me a few years ago and suggested that, knowing that I can't drive anymore and I'm barely able to read without a 5X magnifying glass, I'm in trouble. So we need to get me a space at home so that I don't have to commute anymore to my studio, and so that I can find a regularity of life and experience as I try to endeavor to find out how I'm going to make a living as a blind person. So that being said, they carried through with the idea, and about a year ago, almost to the day, they threw a little benefit where we raised about $30,000, and we are still raising money. Our goal is much higher than that, and we are looking at building a small studio in my backyard so that I can go forward and make work and derive a modest income going forward.
Yeah. I was at that benefit. It was great. I played there,
you played
actually.
At it.
Yeah, it's great.
With dear friend Dave Perkins.
Yeah, Mr. Dave Perkins, who's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks.
great.
And,
he's got some fantastic stories.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, it was a great outpouring, man. I mean, people love you. People all over here love you. People want to be around you.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh yeah, you are like the saint here, and you're like the Renaissance man. And I know since you discovered that you had this problem with your eyes, your business in photography, which was primarily your main business for a while there, right?
Yeah, it was. Photography and design was my main thing for the last 10 years or so, definitely. Dabbled in music, was a part of the Steve Taylor and the Perfect Foil, and among other things, played with Peter Furler from the Newsboys for many years, and Kevin Max from DC Talk. And obviously I luckily had been able to stay active a little bit without it without the side effect of no income, because even though those gigs sound good, they don't pay very well. Whereas photography and design was more or less paying the bills. Yeah.
Tell me about the project you did for Vanderbilt Children's Clinic, or is that correct?
Yeah, what they do, I do a lot of artwork around what would best be described as the commercial design market. So in Nashville, like any other city, there's plenty of hospitals, plenty of healthcare, plenty of businesses, plenty of opportunity for artists to display their work on walls. And I luckily met a few people that were the art buyers for places such as Vanderbilt and St. Thomas here in Nashville, and HCA, which is Healthcare America, which is also based here in Nashville. All of these big companies buy lots of art. They, in fact, pride themselves in collecting and displaying art especially by local artists. So my bell was being rung as early as 92 and 93. When I first moved to Nashville, I was doing commissions for Vanderbilt Children's, Vanderbilt Heart, Vanderbilt Women's. In the last few years, I've done new builds in Clarksville, a community nearby, and Murfreesboro, another community nearby, and Cookville, another community. So whenever they build a new facility, they often reach out to me with supply stuff.
Jim, there's the music, man. Time flies when you have it. We got to go.
Wow.
Thank you for being on the show.
JimmyAbegg.com.
JimmyAbegg.com. Love you, man.
Yeah.
See ya.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pitbullaudio.com.